Kim. So today I wanted to talk about something a little bit different from my usual books and things. It is television, so it is media related. I wanted to go through all of my favorite shows of all time, and the criteria here is that they were shows that impacted me in some way outside of just watching them regularly. I've watched plenty of shows religiously, but these shows had some kind of outside impact, either in that they inspired me to write fan fiction or inspired me to write original fiction, or even maybe I had the posters on my walls as a kid, or I had some kind of connection to the material that was more than just watching the show. I'm going to go through these chronologically, so you're going to realize how old I actually really am, and I'll talk a little bit about how each show impacted me, how it made the list, why it made the list. So, without further ado, if you see me looking off to one side, it's because I've got the list on my screen here. The first show that I had, a real affection for was Scarecrow and Mrs. King, which ran from 1983 to 1987. Now, understand that when I was a kid, the TV was on pretty much all evening, and so I watched whatever was on, and Scarecrow and Mrs. King was a show my mom watched, and I just enjoyed watching it with her. But first of all, the fact that the main character, played by Kate Jackson, is that her name? Her name was Amanda King, and she's like this housewife, single mom who gets caught up in spycraft, basically, and Bruce Boxleitner plays the secret agent Lee Stetson. And this was the first time I wrote anything fan adjacent, because I remember writing a poem. I wish I still had it. I can't find a copy of it, but I wrote a poem from the point of view of Lee's boss called "Take Her With You, Lee." And it was it rhymed and everything. It was 3 or 4 stanzas, so that show was the first time for me that a show inspired me to be creative in some way. I was really pretty young. The poem probably isn't even that good. If I found it, I'm sure I'd be insanely embarrassed, but I have fond memories of it. I haven't been able to find it anywhere to rewatch it. I don't know how it holds up, but I just really liked Scarecrow Mrs. King. In the similar vein, from 1985 to 1989, a show called Moonlighting was popular. This show was kind of the springboard for Bruce Willis's career. He played David Addison against Sybil Shepherd's Maddie Hayes. They were private detectives. If I remember right, and again, this is a show I haven't seen since I was young, Sybil Shepherd's character, Maddie, started a detective agency but couldn't get clients because people didn't trust a female PI, so she hires David, who just kind of a down on his luck guy. I don't even remember if he was an actor or something, but just this kind of swaggering guy to kind of inspire confidence from potential clients that there is also a man involved in solving their mysteries, and hilarity and romance ensues. Moonlighting became kind of the benchmark for the will they, won't they, and a lot of people use it as proof that once the relationship becomes concrete, a television show will lose some of its momentum, because somewhere down the line, Maddie and David do start a relationship, and I think ratings kind of fell off at that point. For me, the thing about Moonlighting was, it was the first show where after each episode I would call my friend Emily and we would talk about it, and we would just gush over it. And I was still in elementary school, but And we would, during recess, like, act out our favorite parts. And I always had to be David, but I didn't mind because David was more fun than Maddie anyway. And, so Moonlighting was a big thing, to the point that they had a famous episode based on Taming of the Shrew by Shakespeare that I showed my Shakespeare students one year during summer camp because we were doing Taming of the Shrew. And so I thought I would show them that version. I didn't show them Kiss Me Kate. I showed them Moonlighting. Hi, Crowley. Running simultaneously, but lasting a little longer, was MacGyver, which ran from 1985 to 1992. I have not seen the new one, because Richard Dean Anderson is my MacGyver and always will be. I actually did have framed photos of Richard Dean Anderson on my wall in my room. He was the coolest nerd ever. You could order them from like the backs of magazines. There was like some place in like Laguna Beach that would like, they had like a catalog and you could pick the photos I don't know. Anyway, MacGyver, the first time I saw MacGyver, actually, I didn't watch it again for a long time because I walked through the living room or something, and it was the episode where the guy gets eaten by ants. I remember this. He's like, I can't remember. I assume he's the bad guy. He's like, I think he's like some kind of photographer. Are they in South America? I don't know. They're somewhere, and he gets eaten by ants, and I was so horrified that I stayed away from MacGyver for a while. And then a while later, I came through the living room again and got engrossed in something else. But MacGyver taught me that water expands when it freezes, and that I learned lots of little sciencey facts and got really interested in physics. And MacGyver inspired one of my first actual pieces of fan fiction, which was called Mac's Night Out, and it ended up in a fanzine years and years and years later. I wrote the story when I was 9 or 10, and it was there's Murdoch. Murdoch, of course, was my favorite. He's kind of MacGyver's Moriarty, and Jack Dalton, who's the goofy sidekick. And I wrote at some point a MacGyver X-Files crossover. MacGyver turned up semi-regularly in my fan fiction there for a little while. I brought the Arthurian, so I had tape recorded the Arthurian MacGyver episode and took it to my English class, and we watched it in English 1 year. I don't know. Anyway, MacGyver, again, another show that just had a huge impact on me. And then Star Trek The Next Generation, which ran from 1987 to 1994. And this was important to me because in 1987, the summer of 1987, we moved from the town I'd grown up in to a new town. And then in 1994, here I am aging myself, I went away to college. So, so it kind of very neatly bookended a very specific era in my life, and therefore just kind of what impacted me that way. What happened was I went to a private school, and some frenemies said, you would like Star Trek The Next Generation. You remind me of Data. Well, this was before I was diagnosed with autism, but it makes sense now in retrospect, maybe. But I loved it. I watched it religiously. I taped my favorite episodes so I could watch them again. I had posters. I bought the Starlog magazine. I didn't write fan fiction so much as create alternate universes with the same characters, kind of in my head mostly. But I really, Star Trek Next Gen, obviously Q, one of my favorite characters, the Robin Hood episode, loved that. It had a real impact there. And similarly, Quantum Leap from 1989 to 1993. Again, I have not looked at the new one. I think the new one is supposed to tie into the old one in some way, but I just loved Scott Bakula. I thought Al was so much fun. And I wrote at one point an unfinished X-Files Quantum Leap crossover, and, you know, where I think Sam Beckett was supposed to try and keep Samantha. Actually, he was supposed to make sure that Mulder didn't save Samantha, because then, like, all the things that were supposed to happen with the X-Files wouldn't have happened. Anyway, it was, I don't know. It was called Time Out of Joint. I remember that because I am a Shakespeare nerd. But anyway, Quantum Leap was a big deal. A Portrait for Troyan is the episode I most remember. I even still think when I leave, like, water in the bathroom when I'm getting out of the tub, fish tracks in the study, because Sam says that at one point about, I don't think ghosts are leaving fish tracks in the study or something. Like, it's like embedded in my brain. Crowley, you're gonna cause trouble if you go up there. So Quantum Leap was from 89 to 93, and Highlander, the series, was from 1992 to 1998. And so I watched this show, and my college nickname was Mythos, because that is one of the characters in Highlander, and I still answer to it for some people. And definitely Mythos was my favorite character. I wrote a lot of Highlander fanfic, Mythos Chronos fanfic, yeah, and I'll get to the Pretender, but a lot of Mythos Jared from the Pretender fanfic, because I found the dynamic of, like, a really old immortal and a guy who kind of doesn't know anything about the world as a fun juxtaposition for a relationship. But anyway, yeah, so Highlander the series, loved that. And the X-Files, of course, from 1993, and the original run ended in, like, 2002. By then I wasn't watching it anymore. By the time David Duchovny left and I was in grad school, like, Crowley is rubbing on the computer now. But anyway, by the time I was in grad school, I wasn't watching it regularly anymore. I had lost the thread of it. I'm not sure there was ever actually... It's kind of like Lost, where I don't think they really knew where they were going. They were just kind of making it up and hoping, like, something would suss out, and then it just didn't. I don't know. So it didn't end as well as it started, but the X-Files was definitely something I loved. I watched just the washing machine. I watched it religiously. I had posters and photos in my room. I wrote fan fiction. My best friend and I wrote letters to each other. Jokingly, I was Chris Carter and she was the crew, and they would write me these letters about all this crazy stuff going on set, and I would send back, like, all these rules for don't let them have, you know, any more Gatorade twisters or whatever they were. Like, don't let them have any more Mountain Dew, you know, whatever. Like, separate them. So it was fun. It was a good time. Yeah. So the X-Files just kind of, it was, I in my dorm room, I had, like, a Subway-sized X-Files poster on my wall. Like, it was massive. I'm sure my roommate did not appreciate the amount of X-Files I watched and had around, but oh well. I became best known when I started publishing fan fiction in zines, because this was before, like, internet fan fiction was a thing. I am really old. And then I became known best for some of my X-Files fan fiction and Highlander fan fiction. Like, those were the two that I think I was most known for at the time. And yeah, I mean, X-Files had later seasons, 2016, 2018. It had the movies. I think at some point towards the end of that original run, it kind of lost its way, and I did not keep watching. I mean, I saw the movies, I watched the new seasons, there was some fun stuff in there, but I don't think it holds the weight of my affection the way, like, the early seasons of that show do and did. Beyond the Sea is one of the best episodes. I know people like Eugene Toombs and Humbug and all those, but, like, Beyond the Sea with Brad Dourif. Okay, so then from 93 to 98 was Babylon 5. This is kind of a cheat because I didn't watch Babylon 5 when it first came out. I did and I didn't. It was airing, but it took persuasion from some friends to get me to sit down and watch it. Everybody's like, oh, it's so good. It's, you know, it doesn't have the budget for the production values, but the storytelling is really good. The characters are really good. And I didn't believe it. But it was, for a while, it was on, like right before Highlander or something. So I'd always catch like the end of it and I'd be like, oh, this show, God, it looks so dumb. And then I finally agreed to sit down and watch it with friends. And Babylon 5 is some of the best writing and character arc, plotting, and everything in television. Like, they were right. I should have, like, paid attention sooner. And, of course, Bruce Boxleitner again. I love Bruce Boxleitner. I love him. Like, I even remember when he was in that Reba McEntire video, she, she did a cover of Kathy's Clown by the I think it's the Everly Brothers. And I love her version of it, but I remember Bruce Boxleitner was in that video, and I loved that video. So maybe I just really like Bruce Boxleitner. But, yeah, so in the first season of Babylon 5, Bruce Boxleitner is not there, but the actor for the main character had to leave, and they kind of tweaked to bring in Sheridan. And anyway, so Babylon 5, yes, the production values are, but you know what? The storytelling and the character, like, work totally makes it worth watching. It makes it watchable in a way that it might not otherwise be watchable. Marcus. I love Marcus. Marcus was the inspiration for the character of Arlen in Changer's Manifesting Destiny, which is no longer in print, but if you ever happened to read it or you ever happened to come across a copy of it and you're like wondering about this character, Marcus is the name of a character in Manifesting Destiny, but the character inspired by Marcus from Babylon 5 is actually Marcus's brother. It's complicated, but anyway, it's a really good show, and that's a show I would rewatch many times over because I think the storytelling is like timeless, basically. Then from 1995 to 1998, there was this little show called American Gothic, and Gary Cole played Lucas Buck, who was basically Satan, and he was the sheriff of a small town in, I don't know, like Alabama or Arkansas or something like that. And he had this kind of illegitimate son who I guess was the Antichrist. His name was Caleb. That one actress was Caleb's sister, Merlin. Anyway, I was obsessed with this show, and and I loved it, and Lucas Buck always wore these like vests, and so I wore vests, and yeah, I don't know, there was something about it. It appealed to me in all the ways. It was very Twin Peaksy, but in a Southern Fried way, I guess, and I'm not sure it didn't really get a finish because I think it was just canceled. But like, yeah, I loved it. It was a lot of fun, and I did write some fan fiction, some American Gothic fan fiction back in the day as well. And then The Pretender from 1996 to 2000. So I mentioned that with the Highlander. The Pretender was a TV show about a guy he had been raised in the center because he was brilliant, and they were using him for like various experiments. And he escapes finally, and they're chasing him, and he's out having real world experiences for the first time all over as he like tries to evade capture. And so again, I wrote fan fiction based on that. I especially enjoyed writing fan fiction crossovers with mythos from Highlander, and it was a really good show. Didn't last very long, like 4 years? Was that 3 seasons? 4 seasons? I don't know. And then there's kind of a gap in there because I was like having kids and having a career. And Merlin, which ran from 2008 to 2012. Okay, so I did not see any Merlin when it was airing. This was a BBC show, but I watched it during the pandemic a couple years ago with my kids, and I loved it. And Merlin is the chief inspiration for my most recent novel, The Switchgrass Crown. It started out as a kind of Merlin fanfic and then kind of morphed into something else. And so that is, like, if you like Merlin, but that is the impact that show had on me. Emery is kind of kind of based off Merlin, and Lucas is kind of based off Arthur, and if you go in reading the book knowing that might help you visualize. And then, okay, Sherlock, another BBC show, ran from 2010 to 2017, obviously not every year, it was kind of spotty. I think there were 4 seasons, series, whatever you want to call it. I liked the first season only. I'm sorry to say. I think there was maybe an episode in the second season that I liked. I don't remember. I thought the Hound one was okay. I don't even remember what the third one was in that season. I know I didn't like the Irene Adler one. Anyway, the first season of Sherlock inspired me to write a series of fan fictions that collectively are known as A Game of Hearts. You can find it on AO3. There's like 7 stories. All of it is my version of everything that takes place after the first season, because I wrote it during the gap between the first and second series. So it doesn't reflect any of like anything that happens in the actual canonical show because of when it was written. I'm very proud of that series of fan fiction. I used to get emails from schoolgirls in England who are like, "It's so cold and miserable here, but your stories are cheering us up," and I just have a very warm like memory of. So I had gone a really long time without writing, and the first season of Sherlock actually brought back some of my spark, my creativity. So I have to thank it for that. Even if I can't enjoy the later seasons because I just don't think they were good. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people love the show. I just don't. I didn't care for the direction it went. But that first season really inspired me, and it meant a lot to me, and it definitely, that I would watch again. I wouldn't watch any of the rest of it ever again. Broadchurch from 2013 to 2017. This series is on here just because I love it. I've never written fan fiction. I've never had posters, but I can watch Broadchurch over and over and over again. It is so well written. The characters are so just there and spot on, and I love Ellie and Alec and their sniping and their begrudging respect, and I'll watch David Tennant in anything. I mean, Doctor Who did not make this list because I liked Eccleston, I liked Tennant, I endured Matt Smith, and then I lost interest. So that show for me is not a sustained, but anyway, but David Tennant, always, anytime. Yes, please. And Broadchurch is just amazing. That's an amazing show. And now we get to the two shows that are currently airing, and for now are two of my favorite shows. But I reserve the right to change my mind based on what happens in the future. Stranger Things, which started in 2016. I am obviously a Stranger Things fan. And yes, I've written fanfic. It's not posted anywhere. So you can't find it. Sorry. But it's... I love the show. I have concerns about where the 5th season might go. I have some unpopular opinions that Eddie had a very, very good death scene, and to negate that would be a mistake. I mean, I can see ways in which it could be done well, but I just also am concerned that the amount of pressure coming at the creators from fans is not good. I have a lot of issues about... We can always have that discussion sometime if you want about fan, interactions with creators. The whole social media, parasocial stuff. But anyway, so we'll see what happens in the final season. I'm hoping it goes well. I want to be able to trust the creators. We'll see. And the final show that I think is just so good is Severance. Now, I don't really see myself writing any fan fiction or anything about this show, but this show, I think about it a lot more than I would most shows where I just watch it and walk away. It is so interesting. It's about it's hard, it's kind of set in a timeless, because parts of it seem old-fashioned and parts of it are very near future. So there's this very strange, it's almost Bradburian in its construction, where you're kind of in this, I don't know, I don't even know how to explain it, but basically it's about a group of people who have been severed, which means that there's a way for them to go to work and not remember their outside life, and then when they leave work, they don't remember their working life, right? And the idea is that, hey, then, you're happy, you compartmentalize, you're focused on work when you're at work, you're happy at home and not, because right now we talk about the work-life balance and how work has bled into our lives because we're checking our work email at 11 o'clock at night at home and things like that. And this is ostensibly the solution to that, but there's also some nefarious stuff going on and some questionable stuff going on, and there's this cult-like company that's very weird, and the whole thing basically is just, it's so intriguing and it's so well done and weird, trippy. Christopher Walken is there. I'm not gonna be able to say his name. Anyway, John Turturro. That's how you say it, right? And of course, Adam Scott, who, if you saw him in Parks and Rec, I love Parks and Rec. I love that show. You'll notice all of these are dramas. Dramas are what inspire my creativity. I enjoy comedies. I loved 30 Rock. I love Parks and Rec. I love Community. I thought The Good Place was really good. The IT Crowd, love it. But none of them spark me the way a lot of dramas do, and I think that just has to do with the amount of characterization that goes into drama and the situations involved that spark those emotions. In a way, sitcoms are designed to keep characters relatively static, so that you just kind of enjoy them on that level. Although I will say, in Parks and Rec, you saw character development over time, and it was so heartwarming. I mean, I don't know. I think that show straddled straight up sitcom and pathos really well. But I would say Parks and Rec is my favorite comedy of all time. Let's just say. But yeah, I think overall, for me, dramas are what spark me and influence me, and I get invested in them. I mean, nowadays you'll see sitcoms like Hacks, which I also really enjoy, and that definitely has character development over time. But again, I don't think Hacks is a full-on comedy. I think there's some dramatic elements, obvious. It's a dramedy. We're seeing more blending of genres like that, I think, in prestige television in particular. It's why comedies that do that win awards, because the actors have more to sink their teeth into than, hitting the punchline. But yeah, I'm gonna knock shit over. Excuse me. Scared the cat. Anyway, sorry, Crowley. You're okay, baby. That's my cue to be done, because this has gone on for a while. But those are my all-time favorite shows, I guess. I would say favorite with the caveat that favorite in the way that they just really had impact and influence on me in ways that other shows that I've enjoyed did not. I used to watch Bones. I used to watch Lost. I used to, there are a lot of shows out there that I enjoyed that did not, though, in some way, influence me outside of sitting down and watching it and maybe talking about it with friends. But didn't inspire daydreaming, doodles in my notebooks, posters on my walls, influenced the way I dressed, caused me to want to write, like I say, fan fiction or original fiction, that I extracted from thinking about that show. So those are the ones. Let me know what shows of these you've watched, haven't watched, would like to watch, what shows influenced you, or if you're a fanfic author, which shows, were your entry into that world. But yeah, take care.